I just want to acknowledge being here and hosted by the Chilliwack Museum for the event we're having here on tonight. And for the opportunity to be here to speak with you about the Digital Sq'éwlets project and to have the opportunity to connect with my long-standing colleague, Henessy, here to enlighten you with aspects of how this work was put together. And we're here to take you through what we developed as what we call the Digital Sq'éwlets project, essentially. And I just want to acknowledge Grand Chief Clarence Pennier as well, who may or may not come here. I'm not sure, but we'll have the two of us in any case. So, opening comments about this project, how we call it, it's personal to myself and our chief to speak to this as well. But from a perspective of this project, I think it's particularly cool as a participant, as not all of them, youth and settler researcher here working in the solid communities, to have had the opportunity to work so deeply with the community over a period of about 4 years to develop this concept, to really take guidance from the communities and to work this combination of skills and sets and access to technology and to merge them and create something that stands, I think, as a legacy to support community needs and efforts in the immediate and long term. A bit of a background around where I understand the project arose from was really, again, part of a long-standing set of relations that were developed in the context of archaeology, anthropology, and personal connections in that community that were developed and maintained over many, many years. It goes back to the archaeology of the 1990s and the Sq'éwlets First Nation here just across the river to the north, located mainly at the mouth of the Henessy River, asking for specifically archaeological work to be done in areas that they're reserved in and on and near their community to assess and verify some very, very sensitive features, including portions of the ancient cemetery there, the burial features that existed, that you needed to have, wanted to have verified as a form of proof. While they knew what they were, others, the province, rejected the idea that these were actually burial features. And so that and for other reasons, the community reached out. This is with Grand Chief Clarence Pennier as a significant factor. This collaborative effort to reach out to UBC Archaeology, Lake, and other folks there to begin developing a plan to work on the Sq'éwlets, the ancient Sq'éwlets village, Keithville. So that was 1990s, early 1990s. It set a standard for how to do work under community guidance and given spiritual, cultural protocols to carry out that type of invasive work on some of the most sensitive types of features, installed them places where ancestors were later trusted meant to be left alone. That work really galvanized the nature of archaeology and approaches to doing that kind of work in and around Sq'éwlets. Our land, our world is, when I say Sq'éwlets, it's the Halkomelem word for our land, for our world. And it's a reference to where we're sitting and where we're actually sort of sitting in the middle of Sq'éwlets right now. After some time, after many years of collaborative archaeological work in Keithville, in and around that area with UBC and SFU, Sq'éwlets, the Sq'éwlets community directly, as is normal when working in multiple institutions, collections recovered from that work ended up in different places. Some at our facility in consolidation, some at Simon Fraser University, some at UBC. And the information can get staggered as well. We reconvened, I would say, in around 2012 or so, with folks getting together to talk about what we can do in a sense of, what we call community-based archaeology and heritage protections, working on community service and so on. the idea of holism was really central to this. Holism and heritage. We started to put our heads together around holism in what ways. One of those ways was just bringing collections together. Things help in other places, but just bringing it together. This is a long way to do it. Not really, it's a long way.
I've got lots of slides, but...
Yeah. This is leading into how we get to this, so bear with me for a moment. Holism and heritage, let's bring the collections together. Let's get the code, the catalog of all of what was collected complete. Let's move the collections to one facility. Let's put it back together so that it's in one place and more whole. And then what can we do to connect it back to the community where it's from? And so I think that's where this concept arose. And Kate and Natasha Lyons, John Welsh, myself, and folks at Sq'éwlets, Cat and others, Gretchen Clarence Pennier, nickname is Cat, most people know him as Cat. Chief Andy Williams, Johnny Williams, assistant years went by. Were central in coming together to go after Canadian Virtual Museum of Canada at that time, and led to what we were able to produce here after receiving a successful awarding of a major grant application, which again is fundamental to funding a long-term, deeply led, community-based project that will be able to take you through with that lead up to how it came to be.
Okay, that's a really very good introduction to this project. Well, I'll just introduce myself quickly. My name is Henessy. I'm a professor at Sq'éwlets University at the School of Interactive Arts and Technology, and I'm a Sattler scholar of Irish and German descent, and I've been really privileged over the last 15 years or so to be able to work as a producer and as a curator on a number of digital heritage projects with funding from the British Museum of Canada and other kinds of collaborations with museums and collections here and in other countries. I was also really privileged to be invited into this collaboration probably around 2010 or so when we started to talk about how we might be able to mobilize some of the belongings, the digital heritage, the images, and this really vital and transformative history of collaborative community-based archaeology that was developed at Sq'éwlets, and how could we use the digital tools, not only sort of virtual exhibit space, but also these emergent digital networks, like the Reciprocal Research Network based at the Museum of Anthropology, and other new digital tools to bring things together, to work together in a community-led process that really prioritizes thinking about intellectual property, ownership, the circulation of the digital heritage in a really beautiful, usable, engaging site that foregrounded the voices of Sq'éwlets people telling the world who they are in their own way. So today in this project, this is sort of kind of what we planned in general. We want to introduce to you the making of digital Sq'éwlets. We want to show you a little bit about how collaborative practices in community-based archaeology that Dave's just introduced really influenced our approach to collaborative digital production and design. And in particular, we'll touch on how we've used some really interesting traditional knowledge labels that were developed by Kimberly Christian and Jane Anderson in a project called localcontext.org, and how those were applied and used within our process. And we're going to show you a couple of short videos from the project. And I think we'll wind up by talking about how this digital project actually resulted in a few physical exhibitions, including right here at the Chilliwack Museum and Archives a few years ago, which is a nice outcome for us. We curate something very deep digitally, but then we curate and pull from it and use that to create physical exhibitions so that people can experience it in a different way. Overall, this project is called Sq'éwlets, the soul of the Scottish community in the Fraser River Valley, and it's you can go see it on your phones right now if you want to have a look while we're talking, digitalsq'éwlets.ca. It's an online exhibit that was produced and led by the Sq'éwlets First Nation and the Stowe Research and Research Management Center. We we began it in about 2013 and launched it in 2017. And it was very exciting to see it come to life through this intergenerational team of community members, archaeologists, media producers, designers, and museum anthropologists. Now, these are some images. Maybe Dave, do you want to speak to what we're seeing here? Just a little slideshow of some of the history that you were describing.
Yeah, so this, what you're looking at now, is shows one of the very large earth and mound features, really mortuary monuments that were created 1,000 plus years ago to commemorate the loss of a dear loved one in that community. And this is exactly that feature there. Mound 1 is one of the mounds that was excavated for the sake of proving that these were what commonly are referred to as burial mounds. And within that work, the excavations continued in and around the area of that particular mound more broadly to investigate the longer-term occupation and use of the area known as Keating. And so between 1992, 2000, and 2006, very, very regular ongoing field work with SFU, UBC, ourselves, and otherwise continue to investigate, explore, and learn more about that history, right? That history that's recorded and is in the ground and supplements what we know from the oral histories that are maintained in the community. So field schools were incredibly important. Many young archaeologists sort of came to experience and learn formatively what it is to be an archaeologist, how it is to work as an archaeologist under the guidance of the community. Very strongly influenced a generation of archaeologists that are now out there in the field and affecting how things are done today in broad-based locations throughout Canada and North America. But thousands of belongings. Right? Thousands and thousands of belongings. And a key word we're using here is belongings. And again, working to change through this as a vehicle, our language around what it is we have recovered, what it is we're dealing with in these types of ancestral heritage places, these ancient villages. They're not ancient in the sense of detachment, they're actually ancient in the sense of extension of attachment to the current people living here. And that's what, as Kate said, one of the primary purposes that Sq'éwlets was interested in pursuing this project was to be able to say to the world, we're still here, we're still alive. And this is what you need to know about us. And what we need to know about is a continuity of from the 1,000 plus years of 2,000 plus years of what was identified as a village site, and then that area used as a mortuary area, cemetery area, and so on, multiple forms of uses. Though all of those belongings, those things that are ancestral to the current community, belong to the people that made them, not artifacts, not things of the past, but belongings of today, linked to today and very meaningful and relevant to today, provide us evidence of changing land uses, changing forms of occupation, forms of society, governance, leadership, all these huge array of activities that were occurring on the landscape, and the basis of an immense knowledge that's linked to that, and how to produce these belongings, and all of the evidence of their broad-based use of the landscapes. So the lifeways and economies that continue from then till now are what we're looking at here through these material remains.
Yeah, sure.
So Bring It All Together was really one of the central charges or missions of this project. And I mentioned before, the Reciprocal Research Network. This is a network that probably many of you are familiar with that was launched, I think, around 2010.
Yep.
And it was co-developed by the Stolo Research and Resource Management Center, the Museum of Anthropology, the Mystic Cultural Society, the Musqueam Indian Band as co-developers, who work together to create a system that brings together the Northwest Coast collections of, I think, over 50 institutions around the world now. So you can search draw a circle around your community and see what belongings are in what. I get goosebumps actually talking about it, just thinking about it. What belongings have left your community and where they are? And that prior to this network was a really impossible task. But what it also does is it enables collaborative curation of belongings, and it allowed us to complete the digitization and the documentation of belongings that had been excavated from Sq'éwlets in Kithiel that were in storage at Simon Fraser University, at UBC, and at the SRMC, and then to make those together in one database. And then that enabled our team to be able to curate a selection of belongings that we could share within the exhibition. That was sort of the starting point. There's Dave, a few years ago. At the SRMC in some of the early meetings. And Dave, you spoke to this, but you remember you were there talking about what this exhibition would be with band members, cultural leaders, and that's Dave's handwriting.
Chicken scratching.
Yeah, and here this is sort of the notes that were taken in that first planning meeting. I'll let you talk about that.
Yeah, the beauty of the digital whiteboard, again, is to be able to record notes like this, and this becomes useful as a way of explaining to you what was recorded as told to us by the community participants in this meeting. And it's a living record of that. This is literally what was being said. And some of the main points, the key question was, well, we have the opportunity to do this. We've got the grant. But what is it you want to say? Like, what is it you want this thing to do for you? And so these were notes around, like, show the youth. This is about education, a learning process. Deal with the Sq'éwlets and the Sq'éwlets, the histories, the deep history, the landscape, the transformed landscape around us. The language, how Sq'éwlets, it's important to be using the language in this site, place names, and to a place to put this all together. How to tell your story, yes. So including the youth, this is a live library. It's the links to the elders. This goes to what you'll see later in terms of the biographies and the way in which the digital platform enlivens these points that were points of interest. And I would say, I'm not sure where it lies exactly in these notes, but a key thing was we want this to be a vehicle for essentially recording elders so that they can convey important teachings and knowledge to our youth, and that can be perpetuated, and for our youth to understand that they mean something, that they come from a place that's of tremendous value, that they come from a community and a society that is a wealthy community, and not like they commonly are treated as people who are lesser than. And so the elders were very clear, this is really for their young people as a primary audience, to make it clear to them that they are valued, worth something, and that there are important teachings that they need to learn to continue to carry in their lives, to then pass along to their children, to their grandchildren, to their great-grandchildren. And so these are some of the images of how this was enlivened by then, creating a work plan, incorporating the youth, which is what they said. And I think it was kind of interesting. If you remember as well, Kate, like the original idea was we would generally be working with high school age students to help with the digitization of things, to help with capturing imagery and filming. And we ended up with mostly 4, 5, 6, 7-year-olds up to 10. And so there was a real need to adjust plans immediately and how to capture the young people's attention. What they're doing here, as I recall, was, well, what is it that do you have of belongings that's meaningful to you? Like, let's do a show and tell. You come back with what you have as a meaningful belonging, and you explain it to us, explain it to your grandparents or your parents. And so that's what is happening here with one of the young kids bringing one of their canoe paddles to talk about its meaning to her.
So video became an important way, like a kind of touchstone, I guess, for us, setting up a little studio where over the weeks that we were filming, community members came in, parents and their children who had stories that they wanted to share. It was very open. There was no sort of list of things that had to be covered or anything like that. We were offered a lot of information that represented what people thought should be included in the site. So that was happening, and we also spent a lot of time out on the land, going to places. Sunny, Kelsey leading us, and other community members taking us to important places with the kids. Gwen Point came and joined us to share some of her stories with the children, so this became like a real storytelling session that was important to share, like the story of Nimu, the cannibal woman.
Just on that right there, that picture of Gwen, what you don't see is there's a little kid wrapped around her ankles.
Yeah.
Who was just there the entire time. Right. And also what you can't see are all the elders on the couches with all the little kids, just raptured, wide-eyed and just soaking this in. After Gwen was finished with her storytelling, it was the time that they had planned to go take the kids to a mission to go see a movie. And none of them wanted to go. They wanted more stories. So this is like, tell your story. Yes, this is exactly what was the way to convey that. And it was really, really amazing to watch how much that meant to everybody.
So you can imagine over weeks of filming, going out into the land, different important locations. We took a lot of photographs. We had a lot of video that we filmed, and in the months ahead and in the following summer, we held a number of workshops where we brought, as you can see here, we're looking at all the photographs that we took, watching all the raw video that we filmed in the band hall, having meals, and talking about what we should include and what we should not include. And there were a lot of things we should not include, but there are also a lot of things that people really did want to include. So this is a workshop where we're doing that work. And this was also around the time that we started to talk about traditional knowledge labels and how we would perhaps attach different ways of thinking about the circulation of these digital images in different ways. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. This is the homepage of the site. And I think our next slide actually is a trailer. So we're going to show you two videos today. Natalie's hoping it's there. We're going to show you two videos today. One is the sort of overview trailer. We tried to make it as short as we could, but I think it's 7 minutes long. But it gives you kind of walk through the site and what it includes. And then we'll talk a little bit more, and then we'll show you another piece that's a short documentary. I think on the site there's about 20 short documentaries. And the one we decided to show you tonight is about protocols, cultural protocols in community-based archaeology. And we'll be talking about how those protocols are really the ones that also guided our making of this virtual exhibit.
Can I speak to the imagery for a second?
Yes.
Okay. So,
this one? Yes,
yeah.
Oh, that's important. Yeah.
So back to our initial conversation with folks in that room with the whiteboard, one of the sets of questions we were asking is to make this, there's colors, there's images, what is it that's meaningful to you? When you close your eyes and you think of Sq'éwlets, what colors come to mind? What kind of images come to mind? And they describe the blue-green water mixing with the muddy waters of the Fraser, where the clear bluish, blackish waters of the Harrison mix with the Fraser. And that's exactly that confluence and how they swirl around. The tree line where old Keithiel is still, but the tree line there at the base of Harrison Hill where it comes down and meets the river. All these things were described, and it was then able to be a guide to what to film and what to use as the homepage. And as you saw, language would be important, Halkamelum, Sq'éwlets, and that's what we have here as key elements to be headers for the front page, as well as the imagery of the sturgeon, which is an ancestral connection to Sq'éwlets, people of the sturgeon. And so that's something that would be there and be a draw for people to lure folks in, but just different ways in which the descriptions provided manifest into the production.
Over the years with the different projects that we've been involved in, video has ended up being really important as a method for curation. So, be it we've used the making of the films as a way to come together, to have conversations, to talk through questions of representation, who's in the films, the kinds of stories that are told. It's a great way to bring people together to review the way the story is taking shape and how it's going to be shared. And then there's something that I think everyone can feel very proud of to share as an outcome of that process. And maybe when you're making the videos, you're not too actually worried about what they're going to be like in the end, but it's the process of coming together that's a really important method for colonial curation. And I think the site, for me, as I've reflected on it over the years, I've been really excited about what we were able to do because of the way that we were able to center video and photography together as a way to do that.
I would agree. I think that's like the storytelling methodology matches very well with this approach to video, visual imagery, digital foundation, oral histories, spoken word, all match extremely well with this, where we traditionally have looked at texts and static pages. The language itself is so much more readily available when it is spoken and not written. We have faced this in education for a long time, where teachers, not wanting to offend by saying things wrong, just simply won't approach language, right? How Kamelam has suffered from that, and still does. But these, I would say, breakthroughs in the approach to teaching language is through the digital media and the sound clips, and to be able to hear it, even if you can associate it with the written word. So the many sound clips, sound bites we have here that you can hover over or hear with the word spoken, is this lends to its, like as you're suggesting, to which I agree, that this medium works really, really well in parallel with and supporting, I would say, Indigenous storytelling methodologies. And the community engaging in the process of creating this is effectively, they're coming together to tell their own story. And that is something that, again, I've heard many times, our story has been told for us far too long. It's time we do tell our own stories, and this is an example of an outcome where the Scouts community did that and used a very innovative approach. Part of our requirement was to have sort of cutting-edge digital technology in the basis of creating this website. So not only telling the story, creating the foundation for the story, but utilizing current cutting-edge technology to represent that. I think lots to be proud of, and I think the community felt very much that way.
So Sq'éwlets is one of 24 communities in Stalo, and I'm proud to say that we're a small community and we're a healing community. So I wanted to really put a blueprint to outline the true history of the Sq'éwlets tribe.
From the beginning, we learned about how chachals traveled throughout the territory and meeting people, and some of those people would challenge him on his powers and he would turn them into stone and leave those landmarks as a lesson to us today and the other people that come after us.
I know that our ancestors lived in this holistic world where they just knew that they were connected to everything.
I think for our young people to learn and for the general people to see that this is who we are and how we did things, but at the same time, we're still here. We haven't been assimilated into as a Western culture.
The spirit of the canoe, as soon as you're a whole team working as one, you could feel that same spirit and the canoe will take you.
The collaborative model of archaeology that I'm aware of in Stalo territory really originated here with the work at Sq'éwlets.
It has transformed my understanding of archaeology. How I do the research I do is not in any way the same as it was before being taught by the people of Sq'éwlets and people in the greater Stalo community.
I think the biggest thing was they had to show respect.
We had nicknames for them. They became family. All the artifacts that they found there, and then when they found the remains, it was just like another world.
We as archaeologists are disturbers, and we take things away. We take things that don't belong to us. Being instructed by the elders and by cultural workers how to approach our work with a good mind, to be of good mind, to be of good heart, to leave your negativity behind.
The artifacts at the site tell the same story. The kinds of tools that were left behind by the people who lived there showed that they were engaged in the same range of activities: fishing, logging, mining. All of those kinds of activities were practiced and are evident by the kinds of tools left behind.
I guess all those things were just a part of our ancestors' everyday lives.
In our tradition, if you married, the husband moved to the wife's reserve. But because we were displaced through government policies where if you married, you had to move to your husband's reserve.
Residential school. Everything was punishment.
You know, that policy really almost wiped out our nation. And we've survived all of what's been thrown before us. So I thought it's very important that we let our kids be part of something as a transition.
Why we are, what are we really here on this earth at this time for? And I really believe it has to do with a lot of healing. Like they say, if you can heal the mind, you can heal the body.
Sq'éwlets community has, with the current chief and council, have in the past couple of years been involved in, again, repatriation, in particular ancestral remains from the Museum of Vancouver, in Vancouver. And the remains of 3 individuals, actually one at the Lab of Archaeology at UBC, and 2 from the Museum of Vancouver, being returned physically. So the participation in that process too is you know, it's connected to archaeology, it's connected to the heritage very, very individually to the remains of individuals who lived here in the past. Particularly those two individuals from those mounds are going to be soon taking their next step with community input as to what exactly to do with them for their final resting place.
It's a rich history. It's very important. I hope the kids learn a lot from the website, and I hope more gets put on the website as time goes on.
Our Aboriginal title and our Aboriginal rights are collective rights. We have to think 7 generations past and look 7 generations into the future to make sure that our great-great-great-great-grandchildren are going to have some of the same benefits that we enjoy today. So, you know, in terms of collaboration, it's try to make sure that that happens.
So these are just the front pages to a number of the sections of the site. And again, some of the major sections, Sq'éwlets, as you saw Kat, Grand Chief Clarence Pennier speak to as one of the 2 major forms of oral histories. And so this is the form of oral history that accounts for how the world came to be through transformations, and which has a section here as well linked to maps, what you can see from the current community, what you can see from the old Keithiel village. And so using GIS technology and mapping to look at the visual landscape that highlights what particularly important Sq'éwlets places you can see from home. And Sq'éwlets, the other portion of that distinctly, well, the broad base of oral histories, but Sq'éwlets meaning true news, personal histories. And it's what Johnny Williams was doing. The difference between looking at the land, that was Mount Cheon, or Thiefel Cape in that image. This is Johnny filleting salmon. You know, a traditional activity carries a tremendous amount of skill and is passed on over generations. Linked to the land in different ways, places of practice, fishing sites, fishing technologies, and the oral histories that link back to that. And then our belongings, and again, that important stems from work you were doing with Musqueam prior to this, that really brought that name forward and that connection. Again, let's turn this around and look at what we're dealing with from an Indigenous lens and use language that's representative of that in terms of an actual authentic foundation for representation and connection. In the Our Voices section, again, this is where you get into all those many documentaries that really are tremendously rich and powerful in terms of the presentation of the story directly by the storytellers themselves.
So before we show you just one more short film, it's called Taking Care of Ancestors, Fieldwork Protocols. I'll just point out, so when you go onto the site, you'll see at the top of every page there's a series of these little symbols. These are the traditional knowledge labels that I was talking about. So I'm going to take you through different ones a little. Am I doing that now? Oh, I'm going to do that after. Later, but you'll see that this one has a little box at the end. That particular one is called haha, which means secret or sacred. So while there's a number of labels that have to do with things that you might be familiar with to you from Creative Commons licenses, like non-commercial or verified or attribution. We also added additional labels to recognize the particular cultural value and sacred importance of some of these images that might refer to ancestors, that might refer to sacred objects that should not be shown. So yeah, this film talks about the protocols that were developed in archaeology, but I think the point maybe that we want to share with you to take away from today is that the long history of collaborative community-based archaeology that Dave has described was really, really crucial for the making of this digital project. This couldn't exist the way it is if that long relationship, respectful relationship that prioritized protocol, if that did not exist, we would not have made this site.
Nor the trust.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
They had to have good feelings when they went over there. And the way they went over there was the way they had to come back. Like, not bringing bad thoughts back from the mountains. So, yeah, it's all about respect.
In 1992, and following, and particularly with regard to the work that was done focusing on the burial mound sites and the burial mound features, that's when protocol emerged, as I understand it, and the use of tummoth, the red ochre, as one of the significant parts of cultural protocols that have continued to be used to this day, particularly with field work involving excavations on sites. We as archaeologists are disturbers. We do disturbance. We create disturbance to sites. We disturb them. We take things away. We take things that don't belong to us. From a Stalo perspective, that's part of what we do. What we do in that happening can be justified in particular instances where there's questions to be answered that archaeologists can address. Only archaeologists in some cases can really address those particular questions, given our work in the earth with objects. In order to counteract the disturbance, in order to not interfere or to avoid harmful interactions with the community at large, and that's the spiritual realm of ancestral community, who from a Stalo perspective still is there, is still in these places, still inhabits the old village sites, are still connected to their things, the things that belong to them, their objects, their creations.
Oh, when you leave too, call your name. So when we leave our cemeteries, we always call ourselves so we don't leave. Because when you go to a cemetery and you're grieving for your loved ones, sometimes you could leave some of your spirit there. Okay. So that's why we brush. So when we brush, we're brushing anything bad, that's something that might have just latched onto you, so we're brushing it off. But also when you call yourself, it's making sure that you yourself don't leave something there. So when you're leaving, just go, let's go, Doug. Just say it in your head. Okay. Come on, Doug, let's go. Yeah.
Well, one of the protocols that became very important right at the beginning was that because we were on a cemetery site, there was the potential for spiritual danger to all of the people who were working on the site. And in order to protect all of the participants in the project, we were taught how to use tummoth, red ochre, or hematite that's turned into a red paint that we could use to mark our foreheads and our chest and our wrists so that we would become visible to the spirits at the site.
It was for our protection, mostly for the people that are buried on the site. So they'd see the tummoth and they'd know you were coming, and so they could identify you, and it was also so while you were there, if you happened to pick up something like an old artifact, that something off of the artifact wasn't going to jump on you, and then you'd have to take that back. Mm-hmm. And it was for protection.
What I know of tummoth is that it's strong medicine. It's a protector. It's a healer.
I was just told that it was to protect you from spirits, and I was told that the spirits on the other side recognize you if you're wearing the tamith, and otherwise if you're not wearing it, they can't see you, they don't know who you are. But once it's in place, it doesn't matter who you are, they know who you are, they recognize you. And so it's very important to wear it. It doesn't matter who you are, they recognize you. So, and that's nice, That's something to be said about the spirits. So tamith is just, I'm very proud to wear it when I can. You want to be recognized. You want them to see you even if it's just for a brief moment. Yeah.
In large part, with the ancestral community, the practice of burnings, spiritual burnings, feeding the ancestors, these are practices that go back likely thousands of years, and that we're seeing in the work we're doing in archaeology. We think, particularly in relationship to the burial mounds, one way in which we see practices like this occurring in the past that continue to be used today in the community and now are incorporated into our archaeological work. This project is overall about increasing the visibility of the relationships between what's otherwise an us and them kind of relationship to be able to work together without harm coming to any of the parties. And so archaeologists applying tamith before they go on site, being instructed by the elders and by cultural workers how to approach our work with a good mind, to be of good mind, to be of good heart, to leave your negativity behind, to do our work on site in the best possible way, and to avoid conflict on site.
One of the conferences that took place was with Elder Frank Malloway, and he and other elders, along with other community members at Sq'éwlets, thought that it was really worthwhile excavating the mounds to the point where we could demonstrate that they were part of the Sq'éwlets cemetery, and that they were burial mounds and not just constructions of earth. So then we did that. We proceeded to go ahead and excavate the centers of the mounds, following the instructions of the elders, and following the protocol that they developed for how we would go about doing it, and how the whole process should unfold. And that was a really, really useful experience, because we wouldn't have known how to proceed within community protocols without that kind of support from and advice and guidance from the elders in the community. It was absolutely essential to every part of the decisions about how we went ahead with what we did.
I'll just show you that these are some of the traditional knowledge labels that are really an extension of what you've just seen in this. It's part of the protocol of creating a digital project that also extends and shares and educates the public about Sq'éwlets' protocol for doing this kind of cultural work. So this is, we don't have time to talk all about traditional knowledge labels, but essentially this is a Sq'éwlets Halkomelem language version of the labels, and many other nations around the world are also creating their own versions of these labels for outreach, for attribution, for non-commercial, and like I said before, haha, for secret. So please take a look at them if you're interested in knowing more about those. And then just to close, this site had a really beautiful manifestation at the Reach Gallery in Abbotsford when we launched the project, where we could feature these beautiful photographs taken by members of our project team, the traditional knowledge labels, where there could be a Sq'éwlets opening and acknowledgement in the Reach, which had not happened there before. and a nice opening with the community. And then another installation of the project here down at the Chilliwack Museum and Archives, which we were really happy to be able to do. And then finally, the Reach exhibition came home to the Sq'éwlets Band Hall for a permanent installation, and it's still there now with the project and the kiosk. So, this is the project that we wanted to share, and I really appreciate you being here to hear us talk about it and figure out the cutting-edge technology. But I hope maybe you have some questions or some things you want to ask. And Dave, you want to?
Last thing I would like to say just to...
Yes, please.
And just the last thing, just acknowledging all of the elders who are no longer with us, who are here in this part of this production. And it's looking at it now, it really is striking how many of those fine people we've lost since we made this piece. So it does pay respect to them, and it's worked as well. Not that we had that in mind, but from what we were told, this is something that those elders will be able to continue to perpetuate the sharing of their knowledge with their youth, with their children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and so on, and with all others, so that it's serving that purpose.